Welcome to the 75 podcast. I'm Michael Hahn, and in this episode, we're going to be joined by Maggie Bowman, another founding member of the 75, and we're going to get to meet her and talk a little bit about her journey from disillusionment to movement building. We're also going to discuss about our plans for getting a constitutional amendment that will address money in politics and enable future campaign finance reform. How we plan to get there through building a coalition and building a brand, and what gives us hope for the future. Oh, with that, I like to say, let's make corruption illegal again.
Have you ever wondered how our political system became so intertwined with big money? Well, it wasn't always like this. Decades ago, there were limits and regulations in place to prevent corruption and ensure fair elections. But then came a series of pivotal court decisions that established that money equals speech, setting the stage for the wealthy to have an outsized influence on politics. It's no wonder that over 75% of Americans believe it's time to take big money out of politics. Join us as we explore how money influences U.S. politics in profound and sometimes unsettling ways. The 75 podcast starts now.
Welcome back to the podcast. Again, I'm Michael Hahn, and as a quick recap, in the last episode, we covered a number of topics. We scratched the surface on a number of topics, including kind of how we got to this point with the Lewis Powell manifesto memorandum that outlined how the courts could recapture and take back our country a little bit, and how they can deal with activist judges. And that's essentially what happened. And we outlined a little bit about the Buckley versus Valeo decision in 1976 and how that was an inspiration for the name of this coalition, the 75, which is the year before the Buckley versus Valeo decision. We talked about some of the issues that, are impacted because we have this undue influence, this overwhelming influence of money in politics, such as the cost of prescription drug prices, and more even consequential issues than that, which is just the lack of trust in our government and how that erodes the public's confidence that things will get done and really impacts kind of our hope or the feeling of hope for the future. We talked about changing technology and what AI could mean when we have this systemic issue in place, and how important it is to try and recapture and regain and amend the Constitution so that we have the voices of the people and the majority impacting or influencing, I should say, our senators and our congressmen so that they have our best interests in their hearts and minds, and not the interests of the super rich billionaire class that, there's a very select few that can have this outsized influence on our government. So today, I mentioned I'm joined by Maggie Bowman, and Maggie is like a co-founding member. Maggie was the number one person that joined me in the very, very beginning and really helped influence how we got started and where we are today as well. In addition to Maggie's full-time job, she is a writer. She is a system changer, and she is a bridge builder. She is the founder of the Be Future Focused platform. And I don't know where she finds all this extra time, but she's also a member of a number of other groups, including obviously the 75. And I'd like to welcome Maggie to the show. And thank you, Maggie, for being here. So what kind of got you started with the 75? What inspired you?
Well, it was, you had come on an Operation Hope call, and I was talking about it, and looking at it. When I heard you talk, I felt that it was, you were bringing up, this is the issue, this is the moment, and we need each other to do it, to work on this. And it didn't feel like just another think tank or another nonprofit. And because I had already been thinking about these things, and I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do about it. So when you came with the 75, I was just like, that's a really great idea and a really great framing.
So you were kind of thinking about it like beforehand. What were you kind of thinking about, before that moment? What's been some of your, I guess, inspiration, or what was in the background, I should say, I guess is the right question.
I think I've always been kind of disillusioned by the world. As a kid, I could always tell that something wasn't right, and I didn't have the words for it. And I just knew there were rules that no one would admit to out loud. That if you had money, you were treated better, and that race and class shaped everything, and that we weren't supposed to talk about it. And when I did try to talk about it, I was told I was being difficult, or as being dramatic, or that I was just wrong. And it was like there was a weight in the room, and I could feel it pressing down, but no one would name it.
That's a very interesting background. So were you able to like connect that feeling to money and politics somehow? Is that...
Yeah, it kind of evolved slowly. I'd always been someone to ask hard questions, and I pushed back in school. I would write blog posts that would get me in trouble. I've never been good at playing nice with silence. And in college is when it was starting to crystallize for me. I got involved in theater for the first time, and I learned to not be afraid to take up space. And our theater department was really great because it wasn't just about putting on shows. It taught me how to reach people, build coalitions, and use stories to speak truth to power. And working with those directors, professors, and my peers who cared about community and change, it shaped how I thought about systems. And theater became more than art. It became a praxis of a way of building something together. And when I lived in China, that also clarified things for me as well, because every culture reveals what it values. And in China, it was very obvious that there's family and community, because they go with their family name first and then their given name. Whereas in our culture, we go with given name and then the family name. So that they emphasis on community and family, and then here it's individual. And our politics, that it's not people, it's not families, it's not fairness, it's money.
It's kind of that like every man for himself attitude a little bit. I think is what it feels like you're describing, right? Like dog eat dog approach, which I know is growing up. That's a lot of things that you'd hear around. This is a dog eat dog world, and maybe that has seeped into our subconscious where we now act that way, even though I imagine like the vast number of people don't want to think that way. But I think we probably see it out there a lot, where it's every man or woman for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So, well, one of the things that we, have talked about, me and you, is like for the 75 is that money and politics being this North Star that we're marching towards solving. What does that mean kind of for you? The North Star, money and politics.
It means we're going after the root, like not the symptoms, but the cause. Like, because when you look at why nothing changes, why policies people overwhelmingly support never pass, it always comes back to money. Who it was, who has the money, who funds the campaigns, who gets heard. And money in politics isn't just about elections. It's about who counts. And I know what it feels like to not count. And I know what it's like to be told your experience doesn't matter. So, but I mean, to me, it's personal for fighting this issue because everyone's experience is valid.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that. That makes total sense to me. You know, it's this thing. I think you've heard it. You've said it before, and it's been a little inspirational for me about kind of not being silent and using your voice, right? And what do you mean by kind of silence has consequences? Because I think that's something you'd said before.
It's silence isn't neutral. It's not passive. It's protective of power. And when we don't name what's broken, we help keep it in place. And that shows up everywhere. It shows up in families, in classrooms, in policy meetings. And honestly, it shows up in our own lives when we tell ourselves it's not worth the fight. But it is. Because if we stay quiet, the people who benefit from the system keep winning. And the rest of us, our stories, our names, our futures, we get erased.
That's so true and powerful. So somebody listening, right, and they feel disillusionment now, and there's many people that probably do feel that. I was talking with some people just last night, that one of the core things they said was just this almost hopeless, maybe it's the wrong word, is hopeless, but this feeling of just being so fed up, right? What do you say to them?
Say you're not alone. That it's not your imagination. You're not, if anything, you're being gaslit. There's nothing wrong with you for noticing what's broken. And that discomfort is your conscience, and that's your clarity. And the 75 is here to help us turn that clarity into action. And you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to stand up and speak out with the rest of us.
Speaking up, right? Recognizing the issue and speaking up. It kind of gives this good vibes and hope, when you can say, you know what, you're not alone, because there are millions of people that can understand this issue or recognize it when it is mentioned, and it seems like it's just not really mentioned that much. So, that's what we're trying to turn the page on and getting to a new chapter where we're talking about this. So, one other thing, before we move on to the next is, you mentioned that, having thoughts earlier and not knowing kind of how to act on them. You've also founded Be Future Focused, which is, a platform of sharing your ideas and maybe ideas of others. Can you tell a little bit about Be Future Focused?
Yeah, sure. Be Future Focused was my way of pulling everything together. My experience, my years of seeing what's broken, asking the hard questions, and trying to map a better way forward. It was about bridging divides and finding collaborative solutions to complex problems. I brought in everything I could think of: my mixed race experience, my time abroad, institutional work, and my constant question of why does money seem to always shape everything? But I didn't have a clear target. I was writing about systems and innovations, but it felt scattered. And when you called about the 75, it was like, oh, there's a missing piece. This is the issue that unlocks the rest. And it helped me kind of solidify for myself more what Be Future Focused could be about, and being that systems builder and knowing that that's part of what I'm called to do. And so 75 helped give me, is helping the 75 is helping giving me that purpose, because all that awareness needs somewhere to land. And for me, the landing spot turns out to be money in politics.
That's a great segue, because it's money in politics and the feeling of something needs to change and not being able to put our finger on it necessarily. And then when you keep asking the question why, right? It's like it comes back down to oftentimes that we don't have a representative government for so many issues. So let's talk about kind of how we solve it now. What's at the center of our mission here? And, that's a constitutional amendment. And I like to call it the People's Amendment, because what it's intended to do is get the overwhelming influence of money out of politics and give back that authority to the people. So, I said before, it's not rocket science. It's like ABCs, and I think it fits because it's the Anti-Bribery and Corruption Amendment as well. So let's get into this a little bit. And I'd like to welcome back Frank Bahena. Frank, he's a founding member of the 75 Coalition. He hails from California. He's a former military vet, small business owner, father of two, I believe. And, he's just a good guy. And, he's part of this. He's working and he cares about getting money out of politics. And, he's using his voice, and he's going to be standing up and running for office in California. So, we might be seeing him on the campaign trail in the future. And it's a privilege to have him be part of this team. So Frank, welcome back to this conversation as we talk about money in politics and the constitutional amendment that's at the heart of what we're trying to do, right? Because we're not just here to talk about it, we're here to take some actions on it. So Frank, welcome back.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm glad to be back.
So we're joined. We're here with Maggie, right? And so Maggie, we got to know you a little bit. What does the People's Amendment, what does this mean for you?
It means that the people get the power back, because we've had this misconception that we actually have any power, and I feel like maybe we never did. But we should have had this ability to influence. We should have had this ability to consent to be governed. I think the Declaration of Independence is really a big part of that. So I think the People's Amendment helps restore that, helps emphasize that, and helps bring it to the forefront. And it means that that money isn't the voice; the people are the voice. And
that's interesting. One of the core things that I'm thinking about this amendment. How do we construct it in a way that it enables for campaign finance reform, right? Because for a number of years, it feels like the legislators have tried to pass some laws, but then they get shot down by the Supreme Court. So I was thinking, right, that the way that this gets formed is by saying something like that corporations are not people and money is not speech. Frank, what do you think about that? Is that something that will resonate with the American people?
Yeah, I feel like it already resonates with a lot of people. A lot of people see the amount of money that goes into these campaigns and into these politicians, and they see how much it can influence what type of bills or legislation they pass. And to an extent, I feel like the whatever bills they are passing is just for show, because they know the Supreme Court will bring it down, or they know the Senate's not going to pass it. So it kind of just feels like a lot of it's just for show, so to make it seem as though they're doing something, when in reality they know it's not going to pass. Because if they really wanted to, like, let's say if the Supreme Court was really an obstacle, they could pack the courts. Like the president can do that. I don't know necessarily if Congress can do that, but I know the president can for sure. So there's definitely ways to fight and go around it, but that's if they actually want to do something about it. The majority of, unfortunately, do not. And because of that, this is why we keep seeing, just theatrics and performances versus actual change.
That's interesting. It's like we hear for a number of years that there's nothing that we can do about it, right? Mm-hmm. But, Maggie, do you think that's actually true? Is there nothing that we can do about it?
No, I don't. I think there's absolutely something we can do about it. I think making sure that the people are being fairly represented, and that the whole point of this experiment, this whole country that we had, was to ultimately was to create something where the people had the say, the people had the power. And maybe the founding fathers didn't necessarily mean it for everyone, but I think that it was something that evolved, and that it does mean that it can be for everyone.
Yeah, it's like the growth of kind of oh, sorry, Frank. What were you going to say? Sorry, Frank.
Even if the founding fathers didn't necessarily mean it for everyone, they for sure did not want big corporations to have that much power, because that's one of the reasons they did the whole Boston Tea Party and all these other things, because they saw the amount of power corporations had. So for the very beginning, they did not want that.
Yeah.
And it was actually a rebellion against it, right? It was a rebellion against the East India Tea Company.
Exactly.
Which was, my understanding was, as big as a government in its control. Like, it was a complete monopoly in what it had and the trade that it had, with so many different products, tea, and a lot of other ones, bad ones as well.
Some of that was connected to the king as well, which is one of the reasons they had that monopoly.
Yeah, and the desire to want to not have, because a monarchy is no different than a dictatorship. So ultimately, not having a dictator, not having one person who can just do whatever they want, say whatever they want, and make it that it's whatever they want. So it's about what the people coming together and making the choices for themselves.
One of the other obstacles I think that we bump into is the concept that money equals free speech, or money equals speech or enables speech, because, I know we have the right to free speech, but when you say money is free speech, isn't that kind of counterintuitive? Because how can it be free if it costs money? So I feel like, and I don't know the exact polling numbers on this, but from just talking with people, I think the vast majority of people agree that, money is not free speech. What do you think about that?
I think it just means that your voice gets amplified louder. Because you can use the money to grease the wheels the way that you want it to, but it may not be the speech that the majority wants, or it may not be the speech that helps protect people in the minority. So I think it can grease the wheels, but I think it's an abusive power, an abusive ability. It's a way to manipulate things.
Yeah. And, when you equate money with speech, then it dilutes everybody else's speech. Because if you don't have big money, then you essentially don't have speech anymore, because it's been so minimized by corporations or, organizations that have stockpiles of money to be able to run advertisements. Because when I think about the money that's being spent, it's not really speech that it's being spent on. It's being spent on advertising and attack ads and, mailers that go out. The amount of waste that ends up in the landfill with these mailers is just out of control, really.
Yeah.
So, Frank, what's your take on kind of the money equals free speech argument? I don't know if I lost Frank there, but
No, I was just checking something real quick. My thing is that it wouldn't really be a fair, what's the word? A fair way to have speech, because not everybody has, that much money to be able to freely give to not to corporations, to campaigns and to whatever it is that they do support. Like around 40% of people in the U.S. could barely cover, or would not be able to cover, like, let's say $1,000 emergency that they would need to pay, whether it's plumbing, maybe their car broke down. If more, almost 50% or close to 50% of people can barely make ends meet, what would they're not going to be able to have that any left over to be able to use that as speech. And not just that, like when you compare, everyday Americans with like a billionaire, it's like if you heard the comparison, like someone that has $1 million, if you turn that to seconds, would be like 11 days. But a billionaire, if you turn $1 billion into seconds, that's like 31 years. And most of us don't even have $1 million, so we're not even close to that.
So what does it look like, right? If we were to have a constitutional amendment, and that's the center, we're saying that's the center of our mission, is to get this. What does it look like if and when we're successful in passing the People's Amendment? So, like, thinking through now we have outside money restricted. There can still be spending and independent expenditures, of course, but it's restricted to a certain limit. The amounts that groups are allowed to contribute is limited, right? That really cuts down on the political spending and expenditures.
Yeah.
How do we make up for that then? What are some ideas that take the place of the TV commercials, which in my opinion really don't say much anyway? It's the same old talking points over and over and over again. But what fills that void? How do we get information out to people? What are the other avenues? Maggie? Or Frank? What do you think?
I'll go first. Ideally, if we were to pass an amendment, we would make it to where no outside money would come in, and we could limit the whoever's campaigning to be able to use public funds, like a voucher or like a certain amount that they can use. Obviously, they would have to qualify, and I would say go through some kind of process, just so not just anybody can jump in. You still want to give some kind of procedure or something in place so that they can at least apply for it, let's say. And once they qualify, you would want to give them a certain amount that everybody can run on, and that way everybody has the same limit and would basically have to do the best they can with what they have, whatever resources are given. But if we're not able to do that right off the bat, at the very least, we could try to just limit what people can donate, whether it's corporations or people, billionaires, whoever. We just limit it to like 1,000 per entity, or even ideally we'll try to get rid of super PACs as well, because they're just there's so many ways to get around limits using super PACs. And that's one way to start.
The not so super PACs, as I like to say.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They're more like the evil villains to campaign finance reform.
Yeah, and even then, you could probably start by making them public, because since a lot of that information as to where the funds go, we could start little by little. Ideally, we should do it all at once, but if it's not possible, start by getting more eyes on it to see what's getting donated and to who, and what kind of influence that's giving to these politicians, and just continue to ideally keep adding to that until we hopefully get to that amendment to where only it's mostly publicly funded. Because I've heard of other countries, that's what they do. They give you like vouchers or some kind of way to get it publicly funded for the for those elections and stuff.
I envision like that there's more public debate. Mm-hmm. And, we have a lot of different media channels. We have the television, we have newspapers, we have obviously YouTube now that can be done for free, and everybody's got podcasts like us.
Yeah.
So there's ways of getting your points across and sharing information that does not cost a lot of money. So if I view a future that has more debates in every single race, I feel like that's what we've gotten away from with money in politics. That's something that's been lost in America, is public debate of issues, face to face, using free speech. You know, Maggie, you're nodding along.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I think a lot of what always really frustrated me is like with family or friends, or is like, don't talk about politics. You don't talk about religion. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. And then, okay, it's not just that we don't talk about it. We can't talk about it because we don't know how to. And I think that we need to learn, we need to practice that skill and to be able to do it, because when you ignore politics, it's good. Politics is not going to ignore you. It's going to steamroll you. And because it's, I mean, they are power games, and it's, you have to be able to talk about it in order to participate in it, and to be, and I can't stand the power games aspect of it yet. For the people to know how to play the game, to participate in the game, they got to be able to talk about the game.
We need to recognize the issue. We need to be able to discuss not just the issues, other issues as well. We need to discuss them, right? So I think that's one thing that gets lost when you have this system that we have. So that's why I like to say the system isn't working, and we need change, and it centers around money in politics. So let's talk about, now how we're going to try and get there, right? What are the next steps that we're going to be looking to do, or what are we trying to do right now, right? So this is a coalition. This is not a coalition in the typical sense with a group of politicians working together. This is a coalition for voters and for individuals, for people to be part of. The 75 is the idea is that it represents the vast majority of Americans that know and see that money in politics is a problem, and they want some voice to it. So that's at the heart of what we're trying to do is build a coalition of people. So what we're going to do is have a spot to sign up to become a coalition member. And that just means that you support what we're trying to do. We're looking for individuals that like what we're saying and want to be part of this, and can start to just spread the word, right? And on the side of that, connecting with other organizations that are trying to do the same thing. So forming a fabric or a quilt of these different organizations that are also interested in getting money out of politics. So that's a little bit at the heart of it. And Maggie, can you get into maybe some of the details of the structure? You were very instrumental in helping put this together too. So maybe you can even say it better than I can.
So the structure of how people can be involved?
Yeah.
Or just what we're doing. So, well, part of the different things that we're doing is we're launching different tools to be available. Things like the incumbent tracker, knowing who stands with the people and who doesn't. It's kind of like who takes corporate money and who doesn't. Also, we want to roll out public awareness campaigns, especially about the anniversary of Buckley versus Valeo. That was kind of the big thing that, in addition to the Powell memorandum, sort of floodgate for big money in politics. And we have what I like is that any articles, videos, or events that we have or are going to have, we're building it. We, the people, are building it. We're not, if we happen to have someone who's an expert in something, then great. But it's about putting ourselves out there and putting out, that our experience is just as valid and just as important, and we're building it together. We're tracking polls. We definitely are paying attention to polls that are 75% or more public support. And so that because it's about the will of the people. And yes, we want to protect minority voices as well, but we want also the majority of the people to be represented, and that we're not being represented.
Right. Thank you, Maggie. And yeah, I'm really hopeful that this incumbent tracker, or it's more than just incumbent as well, but a tracker of where we are now with the support of a constitutional amendment, and then with the candidates that are running for the House or for the Senate in 2026, where might we be able to get to if these candidates that are supportive win, right? What is that boosted number to? Kind of showing that progress in a metric, in a chart, to say this is not impossible, right? We can build on what we have so far because they're not starting from zero, first off. There's a lot of people in the House of Representatives right now that are supportive of a constitutional amendment. So, maybe that shines a light and makes it more real, right? So we're gonna try and do that. For one, is coalition build and share and be transparent with where we're at in the process. The other thing is trying to brand the issue and empower people to run on it. And that's really where Frank comes in, because, Frank is interested in making change, right? I don't know that Frank was initially interested in running for Congress, but, I think he recognizes the problem and is saying, you know what, I'm going to stand up and do what's right. So, Frank, maybe you can talk a little bit about, just real high level, about kind of where you're at and what we're going to try and do in the near term, to get more people engaged in running for office, and using your story.
Well, yeah, originally I was never really interested in politics or running for it. It just seems like it tends to attract not the best of people. And just all that attention that you have to you end up getting when you try to change things or try to do something different. So a lot of times you don't really hear about the politicians that are just they go with the status quo. A lot of times they're just like part of the background. The people that do try to change things or try to try to improve things, those are usually the ones you hear, and not always in a good way either. Unfortunately, a lot of times they end up getting attacked by like the media or their own, by the opposing or even their own party sometimes too. And to me, like when I see that, it's like, why would I want to join politics when it's just so negative and sounds so stressful? And then the constant fundraising that you have to do just to be able to stay in Congress or the Senate, because apparently as soon as you go into your position, a lot of them have to start or continue to fundraise. Just because it's so a huge part of that, having to have money for your next campaign and then the next campaign, because otherwise, if your opponent is raising millions and millions of dollars, and if especially if you're only doing like grassroots fundraising, and they're getting money from corporations or super PACs, that's already at a big disadvantage, assuming they have a lot of support from them.
Oh, absolutely. And it's almost like they don't need to even relate to the people if they have this outside money coming in to fund them, because money is what makes them successful in politics. So they don't need to connect with people. And whereas somebody like you're going to have to connect with people. So, I think what we would love to have is more people like Frank stepping up and running, but doing it together to leverage each other up. So one of the things that we want to do as far as like building this coalition is find and connect with those individuals that have been thinking about it and saying, well, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to waste my time because I'm not going to be successful. We want to make and empower people to run and inspire some hope that they will be successful when they run on an issue of money and politics, because we can do it together. So using you as an example, Frank.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say, like, or an argument against that would be that even if we don't succeed, if we go in and try to take positions, like, let's say 10 of us, 20 of us, or how many of us go in?
75 of us.
75 of us, exactly. That's going to help dilute the amount of money that they have to put into a lot of these campaigns. And they're not going to be able to, at least my idea would be that, or my theory is that they're not going to be able to keep up if we keep bringing more and more people to run against them. You know, sooner or later, the money's going to run out, or it's going to get diluted, or they're going to make mistakes to where they're not, you know, paying attention to a certain campaign or the other. And that could be enough to fall, you know, to slip through the cracks and be able to get somebody to into Congress or whoever, or wherever we're trying to get them into politics. Because
that's a great point. That's a great point.
That I feel like the more of us can run, the less power they're going to have with their money, because they're going to have to dilute it. They're going to have to figure out where to put it, you know, where to put it at. And because if we don't run, you know, it's very easy to just put it into like 2 or 3 candidates that they know they have to beat. Whereas there's like 75 of us, or how many there are throughout the entire U.S., that they're going to definitely make it harder for all of them, or for anybody to try to get rid of that, or to try to challenge us, basically.
Right. Yeah. Ideally, we'd have an option on every single ballot of a candidate that is supportive of a constitutional amendment. Mm-hmm. Every single race has somebody that the voters could pick from. Well, I know this guy I see on TV all the time running commercials, and, you know, that money's coming from somewhere. This other guy, you know, he's actively saying that he wants the constitutional amendment to get money out of politics, and give them an option as to who they want. The individual that's just running commercials, or the individual that's saying we need a change in this area. So I think that's really important to being successful, is filling out those ballots with individuals that are aware and ready to stand up and take action against it. So, you know, Maggie,
and just to add to that, it also could force, if there's enough what's the word? If there's enough of a wave, or if enough people are challenging and wanting that kind of change, or there's enough candidates that are running on that, basically, it could be the incumbents or whoever are against it. They can see that challenge, or they could see that coming, being against them. Mm-hmm. Basically, it would help push them. It could help push those that are already there to move in that direction if they're not already there, because they see the challenge coming from others. And they can be like, oh, hey, I'm also part of this. I also want to, you know, change and make an amendment to change the way money is included in politics or whatever. And it basically would give them pressure to change if they're not already part of it.
Right. It'll bring more people into the movement, right? Because of that pressure.
I would say more of those that are already in, like the incumbents.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the idea that then I think the more candidates that are for this, then the more, even just the audience, the people are going to see, oh, wow, there's a lot of people running on this. And then, definitely the incumbents are going to have to, you know, they want to be popular. Yeah. So they're going to have to address it. So I think even if, whether or not we go into this, I mean, you want to win, but like whether or not you win, like there's still change that's going to happen. So I think pursuing it is still worthwhile, no matter what.
Get people to address it, get them to recognize it. And then you start forcing conversation and discussion on it, which just doesn't exist right now. And that's why this 75 podcast is being put together. This is because there's a giant void, a vacuum with no discussion in it around it, because there's no compensation, there's no profit in discussing this for media, for politicians. It's not in the system's best interests to talk about this. Or I say the system, but I mean the establishment, for the system that we currently have. Us as people, there's a there's a ton of benefit to discussing this. What do we want for our children? What do we want for our golden years? You know, what, like, do we want an America that, you know, we support at our community based, or do we want an America that is just dog eat dog and, you know, you just trample over anybody and roll over them if it means that you get a leg up? That's not my America. So, and I think that's the vast majority of people do not view that as their America. So I think it's time we push back on that. That's how we win. That's how we do it. So
yeah, I would say that, I would say that not talking about like these issues kind of reminds me of how a lot of times employers tell their employees not to talk about like their salary or how much they're making, because it benefits them to if they're paying one person more than the other for the same job, and sometimes even with less experience, you know, the benefits the companies, not the employees. And so here, like the voters, it benefits us to talk about it, maybe not necessarily, you know, some of the politicians or maybe a lot of the corporations.
Right. Yep.
I love that point.
Yeah.
I love that point, Frank. One of the ways that we do this is by building this organization out further. And, you know, so there's a lot of ways that I think individuals can get involved, and even on limited time. For one, we'll be sharing this video and, you know, and liking this video or subscribing to our feed so you'll get more of this stuff coming into you and you can share it, because this is going to be at the heart of it, a word of mouth campaign and something that needs to be shared by from person to person. That there's a group out there called the 75, and they're working to get money out of politics. Like, that's number one. If you got more time and you're willing to and have skills that you want to volunteer, like, gosh, we need people that can help with research. But we need people that can help with social media, you know, memes and sharing content as well. And even more than that, you know, there's the organization aspect. So connecting with other local groups. So if you are connecting with a group, we want to connect with you and make this bigger. And ultimately you can do like Frank is doing and run for office. So that is uber critical, getting more people to run for office and reaching out if you're interested and saying, hey, listen, I'm just getting started. You know, is there some advice that you can give to us? And yes, there is. There's a couple groups that we can point you to. Run for Something is one of them. And there's another one, Good Party or Forward Party, that could help as well. Like, give new candidates some resources as well to kind of push back. And, you know, there's other avenues as well, but these are some avenues that exist right now that really can help you launch your campaign. Maggie, we've put together a campaign starter kit of sorts, right? And that's soon going to be released. What do you think are some other things that, you know, could help with this movement or getting people related? You know, what are your thoughts on kind of growing our presence and getting more volunteers?
Yeah, I think not being afraid to talk about it, and just talking about it with people and letting people know about it. That's sometimes it's just that word of mouth is really what helps, and that getting over the fear of talking about politics. And I'm not saying it that way to mock it, but I'm just saying it. I'm saying to mock the fear, not the, but the idea that, because to frame politics as something that is affecting our everyday lives, it affects us. And to not frame it as the culture war issues, because that's not politics. That's just power game. I mean, it's power games, but it's meant to divide us. But what are these, like, connect with people on the things that we all have in common, and things like being able to afford groceries, being able to cover an emergency, being able to make sure that our kids are taken care of, being able to make sure that our health is taken care of, that connecting with them on that and saying, it's all kind of related to this. It's all related to that. And I think sharing that with people when we connect with them, and not in a way to like, it's like, because it's not about, it's saying, yeah, your experience is valid and we are fighting for that. And that we are fighting for these things because this is what the majority of people are experiencing.
So it's, good intro. It's connecting with other systemic issues that we have in this country. The cost of living is a real significant one right now. And you guys are both from California. So you know all about that. Talk about housing costs, right? So how does money in politics impact housing costs?
Yeah.
Frank, what do you think? Or Maggie, I'll throw it to either one of you. I mean, I have my own thoughts, but what do you think about how money in politics impacts the affordability of houses?
A lot of that has to do with the fact that, like the realtors and a lot of people that are in real estate, they want their prices to stay up and to continue to go higher. And a lot of that gets done by the limiting supply. That's one of the reasons there's so much, there's not really enough affordable housing. A lot of times here, at least in Orange County, from what I've seen, a lot of things that keep popping up are like luxury apartments. Luxury apartments that people, the majority of people that live in these cities that can't really afford. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they're forced out because, they can't find a good, affordable place to rent or they can't really buy a house because it's so expensive. You're looking at easily like around $1 million or more, depending on what city you're in, for a house, let alone like $4,000 or more just for like some place to rent.
Yeah.
And even though there's money for affordable housing, a lot of times it just goes to like developers so that they can make money off, and they end up jacking up the price. So they end up making very few affordable housing. And that's even if they end up making it. A lot of times there's a lot of pushback for that as well.
Yeah. They have the money. The developers have the money, so they can be the ones. They can lobby for themselves. They can fight for themselves because they have the money. Whereas their customers, the people, we don't have the money to fight for ourselves. But we should be able to fight for ourselves with our voice. And so.
But it's been diluted by the money, right? It's like you shouldn't be able to. Yeah. And the California has put together initiatives to try to address the crisis of housing. A lot of money, but
they've thrown a lot of money at it.
But it didn't go well for some reason. Is that somehow tied to legalized corruption? Where not saying that anybody broke any laws. I don't know. But the fact that this money that was granted or put forward by the taxpayers to try and solve this problem seemingly didn't do anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of money went to nonprofits to help because the government doesn't always have all the resources to be able to reach directly to the people depending on how it's structured. So they would give the money as, with grants and such to nonprofits, and then nonprofits, it's up to them how they spend it. But sometimes the nonprofit sphere, unfortunately, can be a racket. So it doesn't always, it's more about, there's the idea of charity and philanthropy has become corrupted as well. So the idea that it goes and helps the people it didn't happen. And a lot of it is still just not reaching people and not helping people. So that was a whole big problem in California with the money went to these nonprofits to help the people and it just didn't reach the people.
Yeah. Can these nonprofits use money to actually put back towards politicians? Like, is it possible to take this money that they've been awarded to put forward to fixing the affordable housing issue and instead take a chunk of it and bribe politicians with it legally under our rules? Like, I think it's possible too, because of dark money. If you can make it circular, where you get it right back into the politicians, and
I think it depends
nothing
on
gets fixed.
And if they have PACs and super PACs, like if those organizations had, depending how they have it all set up, it's supposed to be separate. It's supposed to be kept like delineated, but it doesn't happen. And now that there have been people who have been pushing the limits on everything, not just in the executive level federally, but also just like on local level as well, pushing the limits to see what they could do to, to stress the system. And like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park, testing where there's weaknesses in the fencing. There are people who are testing the weaknesses and see how far they can go with corruption.
And another like major issue is the outside investor money, private equity, like big, investment companies buying up all available single family homes, or maybe even apartment living. I'm not exactly sure, but I know like I've had family members looking for houses, looking to spend, what I would consider a decent amount of money, $450,000. And what they're looking at is not really, it doesn't seem like you're getting what you should be getting for that level of money, because that's a lot of money. And in California, it's even higher than that.
You're lucky if you can get a 2-bedroom house for $1 million.
$1 million, for $1 million. Right. And $1 million, I think, is like a mortgage of probably $6,000 a month for that, plus then property taxes and insurance, which it's kind of difficult to get insurance in California these days, right? Yeah.
They've been leaving.
I mean, what's the total price tag for a 2-bedroom house in California? Is it, like $10,000 a month almost, when you consider it all? I mean, that's not sustainable for people. And
no.
Housing was how we built the middle class. No. And this is directly related to money and politics.
Yeah.
And why we don't get any resolution to this. So, for people that care about affordable housing for their children, you should care about money and politics.
Yep.
Yeah. Frank, I know you might have some stuff to add, or another issue to bring up. What do you think? What are you thinking?
Well, like, just to go off of what you were asking earlier, usually the average rent in California is over $2,000. So that's when the minimum wage here is still, what is it, like 20 at this point?
I think it's about 20.
It's about 20.
That's probably one of the highest in that's probably one of the highest in the country.
Yeah, I think it's either 18, but I know LA is definitely 20. But the it's higher in California for sure.
But unfortunately, though, there's ways around it, because a lot of companies, it's like for like retail and other places, they don't give you full time though. They'll purposely give you part time, so they don't have to give you benefits, and two, they also for some reason end up giving you like random schedules to where it's very difficult to get a second job if you need it. Because like a lot of times the schedules are not fixed. They'll change it week to week. And a lot of times they don't give you enough. They don't give you enough of stability to make it easy for you to get a second job. So even if it's higher, even though the minimum wage is higher, it doesn't matter if you're not getting a full-time job.
And if you not have a full-time job, then you probably don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then you have to pay for that as well, out of pocket. Like I know like this is an anecdote for me, but I remember like in our school there was a house that was for rent, and it was beat up. Like it looked pretty ugly from the outside. Like maybe it was on the inside, it might have been nicer, it might have been updated or whatever, but at least from the outside you could tell it wasn't that great. And I remember like asking about it because my sister was looking around to see if she could get somewhere else, And when I called them, they're like, "Oh, it's around like $4,000 for one house, not including bills." And one of my daughter's friends, like their mother was telling us about the house. They're like, "Oh yeah, like a family of like 10 different people or 10 different families. I forget how much exactly, but basically a bunch of families had to get together to be able to rent that house because of how expensive it is."
Yeah. Houses are going to end up being little communes because multiple families are going to have to live in one house.
Yeah. And the majority of people, that's how they do it, because, they can't do it by themselves.
Yeah.
That's too expensive to be able to rent it out. And even though like the average is 2,000 something, I'm sure that's including places that are more far out, like, Riverside or Fontana or wherever where the rent isn't as high. But like if you go to major cities like here in Orange County or LA,
Yeah,
you're easily looking at 4,000, minimum like 3,000 or higher.
And it's not just isolated to California either. This is across the country, that really, any area that's close to work, with even if it's an hour commute, which is long, right?
Yeah.
But the cost of the housing outside of those metropolitan areas in the suburbs is through the roof. And then, a lot of other small towns across America are like shuttering because manufacturing jobs were shipped, to Mexico or overseas for like garment manufacturing, over the last 30 plus years. And so it's like, where are you going to go to live? The system is forcing people into, really kind of dire situation where this next generation and this young generation of individuals, they're not going to be able to afford a house. They're going to be stuck in a renter's market, forever, and not be able to accumulate any real income to then retire and live out their golden years. So it's a real issue. And at the heart of it, when you boil it down, it does come back down to representative government or lack of representative government, because nobody's taking any action on it. We as the voters see it as a problem.
Yeah. If anything, if they are working on it, they're working on behalf of the powerful people, not the people.
Yeah.
So the people
the
with the
voters
money
the voters put their tax dollars in California to try and solve this problem or address this problem.
Yeah, but they found ways around it to get around that. Because even though people want that changed, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of times they give it to like the nonprofits that a majority of it could go to like paying the executives and or not dealing with the actual issue. Because if they were to solve the issue, there's always the argument, if you solve the issue for the nonprofit, then the nonprofit goes away. And then a lot of those people that have those jobs don't want that. So it doesn't benefit them to solve that problem. And a lot of people might even say that like, oh, it's just a California issue. But in reality, it's not, because during COVID, we saw what happened, how when a lot of people from California went to like Texas and all these other states. And when they end up taking up all this housing, it ends up bringing the prices up there too. So unfortunately, it trickles down to other states, what happens here in California, especially because we're one of the larger populations when it comes to states.
4th largest economy in the world.
Yeah. And
so we influence a lot.
It should 4th largest economy in the world shouldn't have the issues that it has.
No, it shouldn't. and the nation, the country that we have shouldn't be having the issues it have. The amount of money that our country has shouldn't be, but so much of our money goes to defense.
Yeah.
And
it's a real slap in the face when they tell us that we don't have the money for these things.
Yeah.
When one state alone is, fourth in the world when it comes to the economy. So that's just a lot of BS.
Yeah, it goes to spending on things that we don't really know what it's being spent on. Like, honestly, and it's not necessarily benefiting us as a society, because we got a shit ton of cursing. Sorry. We got a ton of issues in this country with housing and infrastructure and bridges and roads and schools, right? And we pay a lot of taxes We pay a lot of taxes, and the money just is not going to these areas that support the payers of the taxes.
Yeah.
It's going elsewhere. And, it's time to recognize that so much of this is coming from money in politics and the legalized system of corruption, where, politicians are just operating the way that they have to be successful in fundraising and doing all that stuff. But we need to change the playbook so that they don't have to try and fundraise to get into office. That's the problem at the heart of this. So I love that we're here. I love that we're here and we're talking about it. This is the start. This is where it comes from. So this is how we build momentum and we build a movement to get people talking about it. Right. So, before we wrap up, why don't we talk about maybe what's coming up next? We mentioned the incumbent tracker before, right? So that's something that we'll be putting together and surveying and reaching out and putting this up on our website and sharing through social media as well in the near future. One other area is this big anniversary that we have coming up next year. Maggie, can you mention a little bit about this 50th big anniversary that we have coming up? Yeah.
Buckley versus Valeo. So we're hoping we'll definitely have a campaign and some sort of event around it. It's in the initial planning stages, but we are hoping to build more awareness around it and get more people talking about it. And I'm so thankful that there are people talking about it more now. But I think having a sort of whatever the event ends up being, that really gets it into the consciousness of people's minds, because it's getting people talking about it, having conversations about it. Even if people are disagreeing about it, at least they're talking about it, and the awareness is there. So that's the goal. I think the idea of public debates, of having friendly debates putting together can be part of what we're hoping to do for the campaign, for the I don't want to celebrate Buckley versus Valeo, but to sort of commemorate that this was that just before that was the last time we had any integrity in the system.
It's been 50 years since Buckley versus Valeo. 50 years in January 2026. 2026 is a big year. It's also the 250th anniversary of this country, Declaration of Independence. And it's the 50th of Buckley versus Valeo, which, that case is what opened the gates for money in politics. It established the idea of independent expenditures separate from a political campaign, which basically means that outside money could be spent. So it equated money with speech. And that's why we named this group to 75. It's the year before that Supreme Court case. And that's what we want to try and get back to. And that would restore so much in changing the system. That going back to that time period, we were really the time period from, the 30s to the mid 70s where we built this country so much. And, it's crazy. But since that case, over the last 50 years, we've seen a lot of it slip away. And it comes from this case. It's crazy. A lot of people don't know it. And I didn't know it until just a couple of years ago, really, that I became aware of it because it's not taught in schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Frank, did you ever hear about Buckley versus Valeo in elementary, high school, college?
Yes.
No, Frank, you're not hearing you. Your audio is cut out. but I think he
there we
said
go.
no.
There
Yeah,
you go.
no, I definitely did not hear any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. So we want people to know about it. And
Yeah.
that's part of what we're driving to do with this movement, is understanding that this really started back with that case.
Yeah,
It's
actually,
really
the only time I did hear about it in American politics during college, but not in high school. We would think something like that would, you would hear it from the very beginning,
Yeah.
in earlier stages, because if not everybody goes to college, they're not gonna necessarily hear it, and if they don't take American politics, they're also not gonna hear it.
If we're successful in doing what we're doing, then people will start to hear about it in high school.
Yeah.
And in college and at work. And people just start talking about this case as being so transformative to our country's history. It changed the course of our history, Buckley versus Valeo. And, it's funny, back in, it's about 15 years ago, but the musician Steven Van Zandt from the E Street Band and from Sopranos, he actually wrote a letter, an op-ed about it, and called it out for the significance that it had. And it's unfortunate that I didn't know about it until just recently. But so yeah, it's some people understand it. Steven Van Zandt understood it, and he put forth a call for action on it. So we want to bring that back. We want to bring back that idea that he had 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what momentum kind of looks like, right? It's small steps, it's real stories, and it's people connecting. So every milestone brings us a little bit closer to a new system, a new way of doing things, a new way of talking about politics, and that can actually represent all of us, not just the 0.01% that have thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, or in the case of the richest, millions of dollars to buy politicians. So we gotta close the store on politicians. No more buying politicians. There's stores out of business.
Not for sale.
Not for sale. All right. So, what we like to end with always at the end is a kind of a what gives you hope. So Maggie, thank you for joining us right today. And it was great hearing your backstory in the beginning. And what gives you kind of hope? What gives you hope for the future, for being successful?
I think what helps is that seeing the courage in other people, there are more people being willing to ask the hard questions of their elected representatives. And teachers speaking out about corruption in the school boards. And I know it's some of the work I've been doing and hearing from people the first time they send an email to a representative, because they know that it's not necessarily going to change everything, that one email, but they can't stay silent. So they have to do something. And that gives me hope to see people trying. And because then as we keep trying, then we realize we're not alone, because then we're also going to see other people trying, and that we can, and something's going to change, and we'll be showing up. And yeah, exactly. This is a movement happening, a movement taking root. And I also want to say, if we don't like what politicians are doing, in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, they no longer have our consent. That's what democracy, at least in the United States, was supposed to mean. Like, that's why we revere the Declaration of Independence, because it meant you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, so we're not going to consent to you having power over us. So that also gives me hope too, just remembering the Declaration of Independence.
What gives me hope is that we've set up this system our founding fathers did, where we can amend the Constitution, and with the stroke of a pen by a number of people signing on to this, we can amend this Constitution and fix and write this course for the future. And Maggie, I agree with you, that we have this this movement that's starting, and that coupled with the ability that we can, as a collection of people, put forward candidates that are willing to correct course, that are willing to recognize it and sign up and say that they will correct course. I know it's out there. I know the people are out there, and I have this great feeling that within the next 4 years, we see them come up and out and stand up, and we're going to have the options talking about the systemic change, fixing the system. I just know it. I feel just so privileged to be with you guys working on it. And I say it every week when we wrap the meeting, is that, I'm so appreciative that you guys are here, supporting this. And, I just can't wait for it to really kind of catch on and grow, because it is going to grow. And we're seeing a lot of movement out there. And Frank, last word to you, Frank. What do you think?
Well, we got to start somewhere. And like I mentioned, I am planning to run for Congress this coming years, and we'll be following along here with all of us, so that to see what we could do better or what we can learn from it. That way, we can pass that on to other candidates, and hopefully we'll be able to motivate or encourage others to do the same. And even if they don't want to, let's say, be in public and run for a political position, there's definitely a lot of things that you could do behind the scenes, where you won't necessarily be in the limelight, that could help out a lot. Whether it's fundraising, whether it's technical support, whether it's reaching out to people, or just spreading the word. There's so many things that you can do, even if you don't want to necessarily run for a political office. And I mean, like I said, we can either complain about all our issues and do nothing, or we could continue complaining but actually do something about it.
Yep. And visit the 75.us and sign up there. We're going to grow this coalition, and it happens one conversation at a time, as Frank said. Talk about it with your friends, talk about it with your family, talk about it with your colleagues, right? And that's how we get the engagement. So thank you, Frank. Thank you, Maggie, for joining, and looking forward. This has been a great episode, and I'm looking forward to the next one as well. And we're continuing to work on this movement with you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us and listening. And see you next time. Thank you.
See you guys next time.